Would you like to see my maniac card from the asylum? They give you one when you escape. There's a big scarlet M on it so people won't get confused.
I have a Christmas present for you, all wrapped up in the public domain. If you're looking for a wholesome Christmas movie to watch with your family, this movie has it all. Adultery, home security, the tenderness of humanity, and auto care. A Merry Christmas to all. I hope you're all being safe while the plague ravages over human civilization. I have left multiple links in the description leading to places where you can watch the full movie for free. If you have not seen this movie, I would recommend you turn off my video because this movie is packed with mystery. And I'm not doing a spoiler-free review for a movie that came out when my parents were in junior high. For everyone else, I am happy to present you with a review of Silent Night, Bloody Night. I first saw this movie about 11 Christmases ago when I was homeless and artistically lost. I had managed to pick up some work through a day labor agency on Christmas Eve. So my gift to myself was not having to sleep under a bridge on Christmas. I got myself a room for a couple nights at, one of those motels that gives other bad motels a bad name. The room I rented had a beat up DVD player in it, with several bootlegs scattered all around the room. And some of them were notable titles, but nothing I was really all that interested in watching. Once I got to this film, it caught my attention because I'd never seen it, and also because it was so old. But in the first few minutes of watching this film, the use of the music and just the whole spirit of this film just grabbed me. And I ended up watching this movie 3 times in over those 2 days. And it really jolted me in an inspirational way. So, in the coming days, if I couldn't find work, I sat at the library, feverishly writing and drawing, working on, old ideas that I'd rekindled and new ones, just pouring out of my mind onto paper. And so now here I am all these years later, and I have several novels and audiobooks that are nearing completion. And I owe a lot of it to my viewing of this movie. You are looking at the original holiday slasher. Silent Night, Bloody Night was filmed in 1970. It then sat on a shelf until 1972, which means it predates Black Christmas and our beloved Halloween. Although I absolutely adore Black Christmas, the fact of the matter is Black Christmas gets unjustly credited with accolades that should be bestowed on Silent Night, Bloody Night. If you do any research on this movie, you may also see it labeled as Death House. Certain versions of the movie will also say Death House in the opening credits. So the next time you hear people talking about the influential slashers, the camera techniques involved, or the various horror tropes that have been developed and then worn out over the last 50 years, I think they'd have a really hard time making an argument against this movie deserving a seat at the table.
Won't you sit there, Mr. Carter, at the head of the table? Thank you.
This movie starts on a somber tone and then quickly shows you the horror of a man burning alive while this calm soul indulges in a little organ time. It appears the victim is the owner of the home, Wilfred Butler. Wilfred Butler leaves everything to his grandson, Jeffrey Butler, under the stipulation that nothing was to be changed about the house. Jeffrey initially complies, but 19 years later, he's a middle-aged Californian hurting for cash. So he offers to sell the mansion for the price of $50,000. Even in 1970, that would have been a bargain for this kind of property. 1 year later, after the word has spread that the house is up for sale, Jeffrey is on his way into the small town to finalize the sale when a maniac escapes from an asylum, putting everybody on high alert. At the same time, Jeffrey's big city lawyer shows up with his swag and silver tongue to expedite the sale of the mansion. He meets with the most prominent members of the town who are very odd, nervous, and eager to get their hands on the property. Ostensibly, they see it as a blight on the community, but there's far more there than they would ever disclose. Mr. Carter's staying overnight because their business won't be concluding until the following day. Now it's time for the slashing to start. There's somebody in the house, creeping around and stalking all those that dare to trespass on this hallowed ground. Furthermore, this individual starts making sinister phone calls, inviting people to come out to the house. This individual always seems to know who to call and exactly what to say to coerce the desired party into showing up. Alright, so let's sidetrack for a moment. If any of this sounds familiar, that's because many of these things would later be used in various horror movies. Just to name a couple, Black Christmas and When a Stranger Calls. I absolutely love both of those films, and they made much better use of these ideas. But let's give Silent Night, Bloody Night its due. Now, for those of you that are too young to have ever had a copper phone line in your home, there was something very personal about getting a phone call. A home phone was like a doorway, wide open to intrusion and abuse. But there was also something very intimate about it. If somebody gave you their home phone number during that era, it really meant something. So any deviation from phone etiquette could be really frightening to a vulnerable person. Not only that, answering your home phone confirmed your exact location. Very useful information to a psycho. Let's go back to the story. Eventually, Jeffrey Butler shows up in town and people are on edge. Really on edge. He claims to not have a key to his house, and his lawyer and the sheriff are missing. After a very tense introduction with Diane, the mayor's daughter, Jeffrey and Diane team up for some investigation. So as they're driving around town investigating, they start finding cars, and somebody has taken interest in Wilfred Butler's grave. They then head off to seek help from Toman, who runs a local newspaper. Now, while Diane is there, she starts researching the history of the house, and she starts unearthing these redacted newspapers that identify the house as a former asylum. But all other relevant information has been removed. Now, eventually, Jeffrey gets into this house and he reads Wilfred Butler's journal, which then leads us into one of the creepiest flashback sequences I've ever seen. And it is an artistic bombshell. The words of Wilfred Butler complete the puzzle. After his wife died of tuberculosis, he raped his daughter and impregnated her. That traumatized her and caused her all kinds of mental afflictions. The child she gave birth to was Jeffrey. He was sent away to California. Wilfred Butler then decides to turn the property into an asylum. He invites doctors to live there as well as other patients. Now, this was all done in the hope that they'd be able to cure his daughter. But the doctors have become fat and disrespectful, and Butler basically feels like he's being conned. So Butler has the bright idea to free all of the patients. And those patients decide that they're owed retribution. And they take it out on the staff. Now, during all of this violence, his daughter is killed, and all of the patients escape. From there, Wilford Butler begins to drift, but he keeps a watchful eye on his property and the town. Now, it turns out that the mayor and Toman and Tess and the sheriff, they're all escapees that managed to nestle themselves into the infrastructure of the town.
Most of us came here during the Depression.
It also turns out that Wilford Butler is still alive and that he has a feverish vendetta with all the surviving escaped patients. Now, I'll leave it there because I really would like you guys to watch this movie. Let's talk about some of the cast members. There are several well-established artists in this movie, many of whom did not require the spotlight. They just wanted to be a part of this groundbreaking piece of art that has been historically overlooked. So, just to cover a handful, you have John Carradine. And it's really interesting that he decides to play a mute that owns a newspaper. There's Patrick O'Neill. He's killed off before the second act. You have James Patterson, who sadly died very young, and I believe he died before the film was even released. You have Mary Warnoff, known more as an underground artist and also, as a Warhol superstar. If you're not familiar with the term Warhol superstar or Andy Warhol, I left some links to articles in the description. And a final mention is for Candy Darling, another Warhol superstar. She also died very young and was known as Warhol's muse. Now, I would like to add that her inspiration expanded beyond movies. Okay, it expanded into empowering oppressed people as well. Candy Darling was also a symbol for the transgender community. So when you consider the era, it's pretty substantial. And it's very relevant for the times we live in now. So it's a shame that she didn't live to see the small amount of progress that the trans community has made. I think this movie is a muse for the horror genre. But rather than it being welcomed in and respected, it's shunned and redacted from history. I'd personally like to see this movie digitally restored and preserved by the Library of Congress. So I really hope you check this movie out. Again, it's public domain. Several links in the description where you can watch it for free. If you've seen the movie, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section below. But even if you don't, I appreciate you checking out The Dope Show. Merry Christmas.
This inquest is officially closed.